39 years old, Marcus Hayes earned $72,000 a year as a commercial appraiser. It was a good, solid living built on a decade of meticulous work, a sharp eye for zoning codes, and a reputation for unshakable honesty. He lived in a historic, multi-million-dollar waterfront home on Charleston's iconic Battery, a sentence that always felt like it belonged to someone else's life. The truth was, it did. It belonged to his wife, Simone. On a sun-drenched Friday afternoon in October, at precisely 5:15 p.m., Marcus walked into that home to find his life being dismantled with champagne. Simone was standing in the magnificent sunroom, a space enclosed by floor-to-ceiling glass that offered a panoramic view of the harbor. The setting sun cast long, golden fingers across the polished Italian marble floor, a floor he had helped level and grout himself. She was wearing a silk dress the color of cream, a simple garment that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment on the small rental property he still owned in North Charleston from before their marriage. Beside her stood her brother, Julian, holding a bottle of Veuve Clicquot, its distinctive yellow label a flag of celebration. Her parents, stiff and smiling with the practiced ease of old money, completed the tableau. They were a portrait of aristocratic triumph, and Marcus had just walked into the frame as the subject of their victory. "Marcus, darling," Simone said, her voice smooth and cool, entirely devoid of the warmth he once cherished. "We were just waiting for you." Julian, without a word of greeting, popped the cork. It flew across the room with a loud, celebratory thwump, landing near Marcus's worn leather work boots. The sound echoed in the sudden silence of the grand room. He looked at the four of them, their faces glowing with a strange, predatory glee. They looked like a pride of lions who had just cornered their prey. What's all this?" Marcus asked, his voice sounding hollow to his own ears. He felt a cold dread coiling in his stomach. Simone didn't answer. Instead, she glided over to a sleek, $12,000 Roche-Beaubois glass console table and picked up a thick manila envelope. She held it out to him. Her nails were perfectly manicured, a deep crimson that seemed to pulse against the pale paper. "These are for you," she said. He took the envelope. It felt heavy, final. His hands, usually so steady when measuring plot lines or calculating square footage, trembled slightly. He opened the clasp and slid out the contents. The bold heading on the first page hit him like a physical blow: Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. His eyes scanned the words, but they swam together, a meaningless jumble of legal jargon. He could feel their four pairs of eyes on him, watching, waiting for him to crumble. He could feel the humiliation crawl up his neck like a hot rash. He had spent 7 years dedicated to this woman, to this family, to this house. He had poured his time, his energy, and his very soul into being the husband he thought she wanted. And this was his severance package. Julian stepped forward, pouring 4 flutes of the bubbling pale gold liquid. He handed one to Simone, one to each of his parents, but deliberately skipped Marcus. He raised his glass. "To new beginnings," Julian said, his voice dripping with smug satisfaction. He looked directly at Marcus. "Sign it fast, Marcus. We're celebrating tonight, and we'd rather not have you lingering." The cruelty of the line was so pure, so refined. It was almost impressive. It was designed to shatter him, to remind him of his status as a temporary guest in their world. Marcus looked from Julian's sneering face to Simone's coolly indifferent one. He looked at the divorce petition in his hands, his gaze finally focusing. He flipped past the initial pages, his appraiser's mind instinctively searching for the asset schedule, the part of any contract where the real story is told. And then he saw it. Under the section detailing the division of property, there was a single, critical line item: primary marital residence. 24 South Battery, Charleston, SC. Separate property of the petitioner, Simone, valued at $480,000. $480,000. The number seemed to vibrate on the page, a wave of something that was not shock, not grief, and not even anger washed over him. It was a feeling of profound, icy clarity. It was the feeling a chess player gets when his opponent, in a moment of arrogant overconfidence, makes a fatal, game-ending blunder. A slow smile spread across Marcus's face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a smile of pure, surgical certainty. He looked up, meeting Simone's confused gaze. She had expected tears, pleading, maybe even anger. She had not expected this quiet, unnerving smile. "Of course," Marcus said, his voice suddenly calm and steady. "I'll sign it." He folded the papers neatly and tucked them back into the envelope. "You all enjoy your celebration." He turned and walked out of the sunroom, leaving them in a stunned, champagne-scented silence. They had no idea what they had just done. They had handed him the keys to their own destruction, and they were toasting to it. Have you ever been in a situation where you were completely underestimated? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Love Beyond Pride for more stories of justice and empowerment. The facade of their marriage had been built on a foundation of similar, smaller underestimations. Looking back, Marcus could see the cracks had been there from the beginning. They met at a gallery opening in Charleston's French Quarter. Simone, luminous in a $2,400 Burberry dress, was holding court, a planet of old money and influence. And he was just a satellite, pulled into her orbit by chance. He was there because his firm had appraised the building and he'd been given a courtesy ticket. He wore his best suit, a respectable but unremarkable $400 offering from a department store, and his trusty $89 Timex watch. Simone was charmed by what she called his authenticity. He was a black man who worked with his hands and his mind, who could talk about load-bearing walls and property law with the same easy confidence. He wasn't from her world of trust funds and regattas, and for a while, that novelty was enough. Their courtship was a whirlwind of contrasts. She'd take him to dinners where the wine list started at $150 a bottle, and he'd take her for fried shrimp at a shack on Shem Creek where the meal for two cost $30. She thought it was quaint. When they married, her father, a man whose portfolio was rumored to be worth north of $50 million, gifted them the house at 24 South Battery. It was a staggering gift, a 3-story antebellum mansion with double-tiered piazzas and a private dock. The deed was put in Simone's name, a detail her father's lawyer, a man with a smile as thin as a razor blade, made sure Marcus understood. "Just a formality, to protect the family legacy," he'd said during a meeting in his oak-paneled office that smelled of leather and generational wealth. At the time, Marcus, blinded by love, had nodded. He was marrying Simone, not her family's assets. The house, while magnificent, needed work. Decades of salt air and humidity had taken their toll. Simone saw it as a canvas. Marcus saw it as a project. For the first few years, he poured his weekends and evenings into it. He refinished the heart pine floors by hand, a grueling task that saved them an estimated $30,000 in labor. He modernized the wiring, crawling through dusty, stifling attic spaces, a job that would have cost at least $25,000. He rebuilt the crumbling brick garden walls, sourcing reclaimed Charleston gray bricks to match the originals, a project quoted by contractors at $40,000. Simone would watch him, a G&T in her hand, from the comfort of a wicker chair. "You're so handy, darling," she'd say, as if he were a particularly clever pet. He wasn't just contributing sweat. He was contributing capital, albeit indirectly. His $72,000 salary went into their joint account, an account from which Simone made all the major withdrawals. It was her trust fund, a steady flow of about $20,000 a month, that paid for the big-ticket items, the $80,000 custom kitchen with its wolf range and sub-zero refrigerator, her white BMW 3 Series, a $43,000 indulgence, and her quarterly shopping trips to New York that never cost less than $15,000. His income was a drop in the bucket, used for groceries, utilities, and what Simone condescendingly called household incidentals. It was a constant, subtle reminder of the financial chasm between them. He drove a 2014 Ford F-150 with 187,000 miles on it, a practical vehicle for his job, while her garage housed a collection of German engineering. The biggest project, the one that should have changed everything, was the rezoning. About 3 years into their marriage, Simone had an idea. "Wouldn't it be lovely," she mused one evening, "to have a little art gallery or a chic little boutique on the ground floor? So many of these old homes are being converted." Marcus, the professional appraiser, knew exactly what that meant. Changing a property's zoning from purely residential to mixed-use commercial was a complex, arduous process, but it could exponentially increase its value. "That's a big undertaking, Simone," he had told her. "It involves petitions, public hearings, city planning reviews. It can take over a year." "Well, you know about all that stuff, don't you?" she said, waving a dismissive hand. "Just make it happen." And so he did. It became his personal mission. He spent over a year on it. He drafted the 150-page application himself, a document that would have cost $20,000 to outsource to a legal firm. He conducted the market analysis, compiled the traffic studies, and drew up the preliminary site plans. He paid the $2,500 in application fees from their joint account. Most importantly, he submitted the entire package under his own name and commercial appraiser's license, number SC5822. His professional reputation was the guarantor of the application's legitimacy. He attended no fewer than 5 evening meetings with the Charleston City Planning Commission, sitting on hard wooden benches for hours, waiting his turn to speak. He presented his case with the calm, data-driven precision that defined his career. Simone never attended a single meeting. "Oh, darling, those things are so dreadfully boring," she'd said. "Just tell me when it's done." When the final approval came through, 18 months before the divorce papers, he was ecstatic. He came home with a copy of the official city ordinance, his heart pounding with a sense of accomplishment. He had single-handedly transformed a significant family asset. "We did it, Simone," he'd announced, holding up the document. "The house is officially zoned for commercial use on the ground floor. Do you know what this does to the property value?" She was scrolling through her phone, looking at a Net-a-Porter sale. "Oh, that's nice, dear," she said, not even looking up. "Does this mean I can call the designer about the boutique now?" He stood there in the middle of their custom-built $80,000 kitchen, holding a piece of paper that represented hundreds of hours of his professional labor and a near $1 million increase in her net worth. And she had dismissed it with the same casual indifference she'd show a gardener who'd trimmed the hedges. In that moment, he felt a profound sense of foolishness. He had been working to build their future, but she had only ever seen him as a useful tool for building her own. The foundation wasn't just cracked, it was hollow. The cruelty hadn't begun with the champagne and the divorce papers. It had been a slow, escalating campaign of 1,000 tiny cuts. The outrage had been accumulating for years, a debt of disrespect that was long overdue for collection. One of the earliest and most persistent humiliations was the allowance. About a year into the marriage, Simone had sat him down in the formal living room, a room so perfect it felt like a museum exhibit. She had a spreadsheet open on her $3,000 MacBook Pro. "Marcus, we need to talk about spending," she'd said, her tone that of a patient but firm CEO addressing a profligate junior employee. "Your salary goes into the joint account, which is lovely, but my trust income is what really funds our lifestyle. I think it would be more organized. if we allocated you a weekly budget for your personal expenses?" He was stunned. "A budget? Simone, I'm your husband, not your child. I use my money for gas for my truck, for my lunches when I'm out on appraisals." "Exactly," she'd interrupted smoothly, "and those are the things we need to track. Let's say $500 a week? That should be more than sufficient for your little odds and ends." From that day on, he was on an allowance in his own home. Every month, she would review the credit card statements. "A charge for $18 at Caviar and Bananas?" she'd ask, her brow furrowed in disapproval. "Darling, we have a personal chef who prepares your lunches. You just have to remember to take them. This is wasteful." It didn't matter that he'd been on a site visit an hour away and couldn't get home. He was made to feel like a profligate child, stealing from the cookie jar. He'd buy a new set of socket wrenches for a repair on the piazza railings, a $150 expense that saved them a $1,000 handyman bill, and she'd circle it. "More tools, Marcus? Your workshop is starting to look like a Home Depot." The constant scrutiny was designed to infantilize him, to reinforce the power dynamic. Her money, her rules. Then there was her brother Julian. He was 2 years younger than Simone, an investment banker who had never truly worked a day in his life, merely managed the money that money made. He treated Marcus with a contempt so blatant, it was almost a caricature. Whenever he visited, the air in the grand house would grow thick with his condescension. During one particularly memorable Sunday brunch, Julian leaned back in his chair, swirling a mimosa. "So, Marcus," he began, his voice loud enough for everyone at the table to hear, "still counting other people's bricks for a living?" Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "It's called commercial appraisal, Julian. It's a bit more complex than that." "Is it?" Julian said with a theatrical yawn. "Sounds dreadfully tedious. Simone, darling, I do hope you're not bored out of your mind. When are you going to find a partner who can keep up with you? Someone on your level?" He said it with a wink as if it were a joke, but the barb was sharp and aimed directly at Marcus's pride. Marcus looked to Simone, hoping for her to defend him, to put her arrogant brother in his place. She just laughed, a light, tinkling sound. "Oh, leave him alone, Julian. Marcus is very earnest about his little job. It keeps him busy." Earnest. Little job. The words hung in the air, stripping him of his dignity. He sat there, his expensive chef-prepared eggs Benedict turning to ash in his mouth, and said nothing. To object would be to cause a scene, to be the ungrateful, ill-tempered outsider. So he swallowed the insult along with his food. That day, he felt the first real flicker of cold anger, a feeling he carefully buried. The ultimate confirmation of his status came during a dinner with Simone's parents at their sprawling estate on Kiowa Island. Her father, Richard, a man who moved with the slow, deliberate certainty of someone who had never been told no, was holding forth on the importance of legacy. "This house on the Battery," Richard said, gesturing with his wine glass, "it's more than a building, it's a statement. It's been in our extended family for nearly a century. It's a symbol of our place in this city." He looked at Simone, then his gaze slid over to Marcus, though he didn't address him directly. The prenuptial agreement, of course, ensures that the core asset remains protected. It's a family legacy, and it will always be a part of this family. Marcus knew the terms of the prenup. He had signed it, feeling at the time that it was a fair protection of the assets Simone brought into the marriage. It stipulated that the initial value of the home, which was appraised at $480,000 at the time of their wedding, was her separate property. But he also knew a crucial detail of family law that Richard, in his arrogance, seemed to overlook. Any increase in the value of a separate asset due to the active efforts of either spouse during the marriage becomes a marital asset. His work on the rezoning wasn't just being handy. It was a direct, professional contribution that had fundamentally changed the asset's nature and value. He said nothing, simply nodding as he took a sip of his water. He let them believe he was as ignorant as they assumed him to be. In the final 6 months leading up to the ambush, Simone's cruelty shifted from overt condescension to a cold, calculated withdrawal. The warmth vanished from her touch, then from her voice, then from her presence altogether. She was always out with friends, or at a charity meeting. She started taking phone calls on the piazza, her voice a low murmur he couldn't quite hear. She stopped wearing her wedding ring, claiming it was being cleaned, a cleaning that seemed to last for weeks. The house, once a shared space, began to feel like hers alone. He was a ghost, haunting its halls. He'd come home from a long day on the road to find the remnants of a lunch party he wasn't invited to. He'd try to start a conversation, and she would answer with one-word replies, her eyes glued to her phone. One night, desperate to break through the wall of ice she had built, he asked her what was wrong. "Simone, we're drifting apart. Talk to me." She looked at him, and for a moment he saw a flicker of the woman he had married, but it was quickly extinguished, replaced by a cool assessment. "I just feel like I'm being held back, Marcus," she said, her voice flat. "I have this one life to live, and I need to live it for me."